This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Matt Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Mettle Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. Welcome back to the Mental Mettle Podcast. I am your host, Coach Matt Thomann, and I've got a scenario here for you today that a lot of you have probably experienced. A lot of us listening are coaches, a lot of us are parents, and we've all got that situation where if you're listening to this podcast, more than likely you've had some experience with athletics, possibly playing a sport, fairly competitively, and you really enjoy the sport. You have some knowledge around the sport. And a lot of you, if you're a parent, if you haven't experienced this yet, it's coming, but you're showing up to this first meeting. You're putting your kid in a sport, and there's some apprehension there, some nervousness. You're excited about getting your kid into a sport. How will it go? They're going to like it. And then one of the first things, if it happens to just about everybody, like I said, that has a little bit of experience or some knowledge, it's, oh, hey, by the way, we need some coaches. Are you interested in coaching? And I think that happens to a lot of people. A lot of people get into it and they're like, hey, I'd love to do it. But a lot of people get, hey, just asked, voluntold, as they say, do you want to coach your kid? And the first response is, no, not at all. But somebody has to do it. Especially in that youth, in those organizations, it's all volunteer stuff, and somebody has to do it. So there, throughout America, there are coaches all over the place, especially in the youth parts and youth athletics. I would say almost most coaches have a kid on the team. They're parents of a kid on the team. So I think today's episode is going to be really useful for some people that are in that situation or facing that situation. Before you say yes to doing that, maybe you listen to this, you get some advice to from some people you know. But let me just go ahead and give a little spoiler alert here. If you say, yeah, I'll do it, but it won't affect anything. It won't change anything. A spoiler alert is, yes, it is. Yes, it will. I don't care what level you're talking about. It will have an effect at home, and it will have an effect on the team. It just will. Again, especially with the way that athletics are so important in our culture in the U.S. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. I'm not knocking it, it is what it is. But we put a lot of emphasis on athletics and with winning and wanting to do well. And I'm all for a lot of that. But anytime you put some emphasis on something like that, it's going to affect other parties and other things that are involved. And so when I say it will affect the home, it will. Some of that is going to be positively, and some of that's going to be negatively. It will, if you're, for me, anytime I was coaching one of my kids, it affected my relationship with my wife a little bit. It's not like it, ended my marriage or anything like that, or wasn't anywhere close, but it does have an effect on it. It just does. And it definitely affected my relationship with my kids. I coached my son and my daughter at various times, and you'll hear this in the interview. And it affected my relationship with both of them, both positively and negatively. I believe now all for the positive, but it wasn't that way at the time, all of it. So it will affect it. So if you go into it and say, oh, don't worry, but it won't affect anything, it will. And you need to expect that and understand that. And I think that's why this podcast is going to be good, both the interview and then I'll do some breakdown after on how I think I can help. My guests today are two young ladies. You'll hear all about them in the interview, and they're just, I picked them on purpose because they've got two different experiences when it comes to playing for their parent. We have Anna, who you'll hear about, played for her mom for a number of years. Basically, she was her only coach until she went on and played Division I volleyball. Like, she was her only coach at any level for anything. And I think that is such a interesting, just a unique experience. And that's why I reached out to her, because I couldn't, and Anna was a client. I worked up with her when she was in college. But I think that was such a unique experience to have your mom. Her mom was basically, and a really good coach, by the way. It was her only coach for everything, and probably for just about every level, and high school, junior high, probably her club teams, everything. Her mom just did everything and does everything in that community for volleyball. So that was one perspective. And then my other guest, I brought my own daughter on. One, because I thought it would be just a very fun conversation, but I only had the opportunity to coach her for 1 year. So it's two completely different perspectives. One that had only their parent as a coach for a number of years, and one that just had a lot of coaches and only had me, a parent, as a coach for 1 year. So they could really understand the difference and really speak to that difference to really tease out some of the differences and how we could talk about that. So, and also it's very different because you'll hear in the interview that my daughter and I have a very much the same kind of personality, a definite apple doesn't fall far from the tree situation, in the sense that we both tend to be a little bit anxious. We both tend to focus on the negative a little bit, or used to. That's a whole nother situation now. But really getting anxious and really, really driven, and always things have to be perfect, and really got to get working hard on stuff. And then the other example is Anna with her mom. Anna's kind of quiet. She's a really hard worker, but a little more reserved, a little more quiet, and her mom is anything but. So it just two completely different situations, but both talking about the same thing, and that is, what's to be learned from the athlete's perspective for coaches that are interested in coaching their kids. And we're going to talk about the negatives. We're going to talk about the positives. We're going to talk about whether or not these girls think that you should do it, and why that's something that a parent should do, and just what they think about it. So stick around. It's a great interview from a different perspective. Like I said, I'm starting to work with some bringing some athletes on the podcast. I think it'll make it a really good perspectives to understand and just see things differently. I didn't want to just talk to coaches all the time. So I've got a lot of experience with these two girls. Again, Anna was a client of mine, so we'll talk into that. And then, of course, my daughter. So things that I've learned a lot. I've learned so much working with different athletes, and these two ladies are two people that I have learned a lot from. So stick around, and we will be learning about whether or not you should coach your own child. The Mental Mettle Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle.
It's no secret why QuickCut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today.
In a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experience depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where Mental Mettle Coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Mettle Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives. Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with Mental Mettle Coaching and see them excel.
Today on the Mental Mettle Podcast, I am joined by two young women that I know very, very well, and I'm thrilled to death that they're here to talk to us on today's topic, which is, I don't know if I want to say it this way, but how to survive playing athletics for your parent as a coach, right? So that's the main topic today, because I think that this happens a lot in sports for a lot of different people and a lot of different kids. So I think this is going to be a really, really interesting discussion. And my two guests today, first I've got Anna Hayes. Anna, I know through, I've watched Anna play volleyball growing up, and I watched her play. And then a couple years ago, or year or so, Anna became a client of mine, and I actually helped her coach through some stuff while she was playing some college volleyball. And so that's how I got to know Anna really well. And then my other guest I know a little bit better. That's my daughter, Audrey Thomann. And the reason she's on here is because at one point in her high school career, I was her head coach. So that is why she's here. And Anna, I forgot to mention, of course, your mom was your head coach for, I'll let you tell me how many years.
So I started being coached by my mom when I was 5 years old. So we started in kindergarten.
And we're not talking about like just being coached. We're talking like your mom was head coach of whatever you were doing.
Yeah. So she was the junior high and high school coach at Hartsburg Emden, but she also has this club that she runs. It's called Orange Crush, which is for K through 8 essentially, but a lot of every year she has K through 5. And then if she has a junior high team, it's because she got a group of girls together. But for the most part, it's littles. And she never took littles whenever, like before Anna. And
is that a common designation in your house? Is that before Anna and like?
Yeah, like BC before Anna.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
So when I started Orange Crush when I was 5 years old, because of course I was going to play volleyball. It's actually funny. I was actually born on the day of a state championship match, an 8th grade state championship match, but she was coaching all the way up and had to be carted off to go give birth to me.
I think I'm going to interrupt here. I want to get back into it, but I want to say a little bit about your mom that we're talking about, and I'll even let Audrey say something because you two have played against each other.
The most characteristic thing I've ever heard about your mom is that she's literally had to leave a volleyball game to go give birth and be like, "Okay, I'll be right back."
Your mom is and I consider her a friend now. I get to know her. I talk to her quite a bit, but just I don't even know what the word very intimidating and somewhat scary, even like for me, right? Like it was just like forget being on her team. Just like she's an intimidating, imposing woman of a head coach that's just phenomenal. But yeah, it's yeah, that's a great way to put it. A lot of presence.
We would spend, like, before we would play you guys in volleyball, I swear we would spend more time prepping for, like, your mom coaching and being like, okay, she's gonna be intense, her team's gonna be intense. Like, we spent more time talking about your mom than, like, anyone else on the team. Like, it was like, I would show up and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared of her. But she's a great coach. She just is intense.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah, and so whenever we're talking about Anna, I didn't just pick. I know a lot of players who played for their dads, played for their moms, right? And so when I thought about putting this together, Anna, your name was the first name I thought of, because when we talk about what you're talking about, what you're going to continue telling this story, we are talking about the most intense coach I think I've ever actually seen in person. And that is both a praise and a, oh my gosh, right? Like it's both. So I just want to make sure and put that, Jennifer, we love you. But yeah, you're crazy sometimes, and she knows that. So go ahead where you were, Anna. I just wanted to preface a little bit from an outsider perspective.
Okay. Well, so she started, so basically my volleyball coaching from my mom has started from birth, and all the way until I was a senior, coached me all the way through. And then I would even say in college, she was my coach in the off season, both summer and winter. Like it, up until I retired, she was my coach and my biggest supporter.
I mean, just such a big, a lot of presence in your life, and a lot of, I guess tutelage is the word, but that's kind of a weird word. But yes, just she's always probably there for you with volleyball. And we'll get into a little bit about the program and all of that a little bit, because I think that's such a great part of the story. And then Audrey, give me okay, so this is going to be a little bit awkward. I know I put myself in this position. I'm well aware of it. A good friend of mine asked me, he was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I think it's fun. I think it's going to be a good conversation. But yeah, I'm going to let Audrey, my daughter, tell a little bit about the situation that included and led up to me being her head coach.
I just want to say, you texted us to do this, and I was like, oh, this is like a podcast. I get a chance to literally talk crap about my dad, like on his own podcast. I'm so in. But so I guess you were only like technically my head coach for a year. So like kind of opposite of Anna, but only for a year. You were like my legit head coach, and it was my sophomore year of basketball. But I mean, obviously off season, like you said, like you were literally my coach like 24/7 when actual season wasn't going on. And even when season was going on, you'd be like, okay, listen to your coach, blah, blah, blah. But like I would get home and you'd be like, these are specific things about you, not about the team, but like about you that like you need to do better, you can improve on. Like, so you're still my personal coach even during seasons when you weren't like the head coach. So
yeah, and I think that I think it bears mentioning, Audrey, that and this is the same for you, Anna. Audrey, I was your head coach just for 1 year, but then I was also a teacher and administrator and all of those things in the school you were at, which is just, I think it's just another level of pressure. And I just want to preface that.
You were just always around. Like I would turn around at school and I'd be like, oh, hey, my dad's right behind me.
Yeah, which it's just a whole nother level of I'm sure, annoyance on your part. So so Anna, let's start with, the question is, how does playing for a parent coach affect a player's mentality? And I don't know, we're going to toss it up to you, Anna, and say, do you want to start with the good or the bad? Because I know there's both, right?
Okay. Let's start with the good.
Okay.
So throughout my years playing for my mom, I think one of the most positive aspects of having a parent as a coach is you feel safe. At least in my experience, you feel safe. You feel that you can learn a ton at practice. You can get feedback on and off the court, which a lot of people might not want, but I really enjoyed it. I was a learner of the sport on and off the court whenever I could. I wanted to be the best that I could possibly be, but I think that was one of the biggest things for me, is that I had all my trust in her that she wasn't going to break my confidence or make me feel lesser, because I knew I was in a safe space with her. And that's just her as a coach in general. She's a great coach, a great motivator. She's great at what she does. But that, out of all of the coaches I've ever had, I felt most safe with her.
That's definitely a positive.
Yeah.
I mean, a little bit of safety.
Yeah. Do you want another positive?
I would love to hear another positive if you've got another one.
Okay.
I was letting you think a little bit. But yeah.
I would say another positive is the confidence that I had with her being my coach. Not being overly confident, but with her in my presence, like, again, feeling safe, but I had a lot of confidence, and I was able, I think, to succeed more with her as my coach because she was my coach.
Yeah, well, I mean, from my perspective, you've got mama bears right there, right? Like, what's going to happen to you, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that in an extremely positive way.
Yeah. But that could also be one of the negatives is,
yes.
Playing favorites. You're just playing because your mom's the coach. But it definitely went more than that. Like, I wasn't just playing because my mom was the coach, but I was probably good because my mom was the coach. And she set me up for success in any, like, I was the tallest person on my team. In any other high school team, I probably would have been a middle, but she knew that I was going to be an outside in college, and that was my dream, so I stayed on the outside.
Okay, so let's add a little bit here, because I think that it's important for us. I don't know how to put that. I don't want to make you feel embarrassed, Anna, but I want to, tell me a little bit of about Hartsburg Emdam's legacy, their culture, and success.
Okay. Well, my mom's been coaching since 1993. And I think one of the biggest things she says is, so she's been coaching for 30 years, but she has 30 state championship trophies in 30 years, which includes 7th grade, 8th grade, and high school. She has one high school state championship, which is it's a big deal. But
which that was a team you were on, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's not skip over that.
No,
it wasn't?
No, no. Cut that.
How high did you get?
Runner up.
Runner up. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clearly, it's hardly even mentioning, right? It's not even worth it, right? Yeah, I got you. Keep going, Nana. I got you.
But she hasn't achieved that just from she puts in time beyond what anybody can imagine. She's full all year round. She does the junior high, she does the high school, she does the summers, she does the little kids. She's building them from kindergarten all the way up. She takes athletes that are probably would not be an athlete anywhere else, but she can make them the best athlete they can be because she believes in them. And she's just such a hard worker. She puts a lot of time into her program. She's very proud of her program, and it's amazing what she does.
Yeah, and so sum up your high school career.
Do you want the whole career?
Yeah, what do you got? What do you have you give me the highlights. I know you've got some records in there that you aren't going to mention. But so go ahead, I want to hear them.
You want to hear all my records?
Well, sure. Now that you put it that way, absolutely.
I would say in my high school career, we were pretty successful. I had a really good group before me, or ahead of me and behind me. I mean, we went pretty far in the postseason every year. I held the kill leader position, probably my junior and senior year both. I think I rank third all-time state record holder for kills. It's 1,800 something kills in my entire career.
Let's make sure everybody understands what we're saying here is we're not talking about for her high school. We're talking for the state of Illinois. Okay. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, it is. Okay. And that's what I was trying to get out of you, Anna. You're very humble about it, but we're talking a lot of success here. And when you talk about having that safety and that confidence of playing under your mom, I don't need you to say it because I know that I'm sure that was an enormous factor in your success.
Oh, absolutely. She set me up to be successful in every facet of the game, life, whatever. She was going to put me first. The reason she started coaching was because in hopes that she would have a daughter someday. And the only reason that she continued coaching for so long is because I existed.
Yeah. Well, but she's still doing it now.
Oh, yeah, because she loves it. She always did. She always said that she was going to retire after I graduated, but it's been 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, that's great, Anna, and I love that. I love that positivity from it, that you recognize that. And now I'm really setting myself up to ask Audrey the same question, and I'm really hoping, that she can find some positives here, and or this is going to get real awkward real fast because I'm no Jennifer Hayes. So we'll put it that way. So Audrey, same question, but for you.
So I feel like some of the main positives were we both really love basketball. Even if we're not playing, we're both just passionate about it. And it gave us it's something I'll always remember, this is a really good bond I have with my dad. I played for him for a year, but it's just something we both have in common. We'll always love basketball the same way. And same with Lane, my brother. So he loves basketball more than probably both of us. He is obsessed with basketball, and it just gives us all something to bond over as a family, and I just really enjoyed that. It was basketball is family time.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know so. I loved it. I mean, I'd like to think that you enjoy it because you enjoy it, not just because that was the option, but that was,
some of both. Some
of both, yeah. And then I'll take that it was that good, but how is that, but a lot of families are going to have that because the mom or the dad played basketball, and the kids like it. But what made it a little bit different? I mean, because the one perspective that you have that Anna doesn't is you've definitely played for more coaches, right?
Yeah.
And I was just one of those.
Yes.
Right. So you've got a perspective that's different in the sense that you can compare what it's like, playing for a parent versus not. Yeah. So what's the positive of the differences?
It's the positive is that you do feel comfortable because it's at the end of the day, you're my dad, you're still going to be there for me. But then the confidence that she talked about that she had, I felt the opposite. I felt under more pressure playing for you. If I don't do this well, I'm not just disappointing my coach. I feel like I'm disappointing my dad. So I felt comfortable, but I felt under more pressure because I looked up to you so much and everything and knew how much you loved basketball, and we both did. But I'd be I really have to do well because I want him to know that I am working.
Yeah, and I when Anna said that about the confidence, it was in my head. I'm Audrey's going to say the opposite. And I don't think that's, and I think that's part of what we're talking about here is it's not just, it's more about the relationship. It's going to be a completely different situation depending on the kid and depending on the parent.
You coaching Lane is way different than you coaching me.
Yeah, that's my son. Yeah,
me.
Yeah, exactly. He's a different individual, and it's It's such an interesting idea to talk about, to see the difference and how it can affect. So there was definitely some positives there that are probably easier for both of you to pick out now that you are out of it. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that you are, what's the term, Anna? Now that you're NARPs, is that the word?
Now that we're NARPs, non-athletic regular people.
Yeah, which is, I know that's a big deal for athletes sometimes. It's like, oh, that's my identity. How do I, especially in you guys' situation, right? Like Anna, how does Anna be anything but
Yeah,
a volleyball player?
That was a huge thing for me when I was deciding whether or not to retire, because I had 2 years of eligibility left in the college NCAA world, and that's a lot of eligibility to have left, and just throwing it away. I don't feel like I threw it away. But it was what, Anna's not going to play volleyball anymore, and she still is able to play volleyball? Like, what's her mom going to say? What's going to happen? It was a really, really hard decision for me to make, but looking back, it was the right decision.
Yeah, and I love hearing you say that, because if you don't mind, like, I helped you through that decision. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot for you. And I think that, again, I mentioned that you were a client, and I hope you don't mind me saying that, but it was, your mom was not the source of the frustration.
No.
Whenever you were trying to decide what to do, but she was what she was, and what everybody thought about her and you was definitely part of the equation.
It was. It's like me deciding to step away. I was like, who am I going to disappoint? Who's going to question it? Who's going to care? Like, who am I going to let down? It was, the number one person was my mom, which I was completely wrong about. She would never be disappointed in any decision I make to make myself happy, but it was a big decision.
Yeah, it was. And I applaud you for making that decision and being strong about it, because it was tough. We're going to take a break real quick, and we're going to start diving into the negative, ladies. All right. So just, you're ready. Be ready, Audrey. Here's your chance. All right. Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mental Mettle Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount. The Mental Mettle Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. And we are back on the Mental Mettle Podcast with my guests, Anna Hayes and Audrey Thomann, self-proclaimed NARPs, non-athletic regular people who used to be athletes, and not just any athletes, but athletes that had the pleasure and the misfortune of playing their sport for their parent as coaches. And we've talked a little bit about the pleasure and the confidence and the love that it gets shared in that sport, in the home and on the court. But now we're going to talk about the misfortune about it and how that can affect the mentality of the athlete when being coached by their parent. So we will start with Anna and get a chance for Anna to talk about her mom, the highly successful Jennifer Hayes of Hardsburg, Emden.
Okay. I'm going to start off by saying that there is definitely more positive than negative, and being past 5 years playing in high school, you definitely remember more of the positives than the negatives. But there were some things about my mom being my high school coach that was hard. So just naturally, I think, like, at her being my mom and my coach, you don't have to worry about a parent getting angry because you're being hard on the kid, right? Like, it's her kid. She can be as hard on me as she wants, which she was very good about when it happened. But there were times where she would just drill me. I remember one time when I was, this is the earliest memory. I was in 5th grade, and we were in a regional game, and junior high regionals, those are serious, but it was my first postseason game ever.
Time out. I don't know if those listening think that Anna's joking there, but she's 100% not joking. So I will just go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and put that in. All right. Go ahead.
It was a regional game, and I was in 5th grade on a 7th grade team. I only played back row my first year because not that I couldn't hit, but I wasn't quite tall enough yet, and I was 11. So I remember it was the first game, and I was in serve receive, just out there, and I shanked a ball, first serve, ace, and she goes, "Anna, that's 1." And then I did it again. She goes, 2. And then I did it for a third time. She goes, 3. And then she ripped me out, benched me. I'm on the bench, just in tears, like. And that was in 5th grade, but that was one of the first instances where I'd been coached by her, like, seriously. That was in 5th grade is when you start in your, like, real season, and she definitely never did anything like that again, but it was
well, because you learned, right?
Yeah, like she's really adaptable, right? But
no, I'm joking, but yeah.
Yeah, she hates that story. She hates when I bring it up, but
does she?
I think it's good for the podcast. I was in no way damaged by the situation. I am okay now, but
okay now. Some like 10 years later,
I still remember it.
Yeah, that was how old are you now, Anna?
I'm 22.
Yeah, so 11 years ago, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it didn't affect me as a player. But at the time,
I gotcha.
Like, she knew, like, I was too hard, like, I need to step back, and I don't think she would have done that to, like, any of the other players, but because I was her daughter, she could be as hard on me as she wanted, but, yeah.
Yeah.
When I got into high school, she expected a lot out of me, which I was okay with. Like, I'm the type of athlete that will give 100% in everything that I do, but it was, like, she just sometimes would just push me, which is fine. Like, I turned out great, but I don't know. I think sometimes maybe, like, pumping the brakes a little bit is okay.
Yeah.
I remember one time I made a mistake. I had, like, missed a bunch of serves, and I had to run 30 bleachers, and in our gym, there's a lot of freaking bleachers, and they're big. They're not like those one step. It's like a double step.
They're like the wooden built-in ones, aren't they?
Yeah, they're ancient and they're huge. But I would say those are, like, the negatives from what I remember. Those hit the main ones. Potentially, so nobody in our gym ever talked back to my mom, ever. That was unheard of. It's disrespectful, it's rude. But me being her daughter, I would tend to talk back. And
I want to hear about, I'm really excited to hear about this. I'm just going to say it.
If something would happen, and we would get into it, and which happened quite often. I mean, I'm probably, like, dog tired doing something, and she's yelling at me for something, and and everyone in the gym would just go silent. And I think that was also hard about us, like, her coaching me. I sometimes didn't know when to shut my mouth, but Yeah, I would say a few negatives, but mostly positive.
It's hard because and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I'm really interested in the carryover from like the court to the house. But we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll let Audrey, and maybe that's what she's going to say. I don't know, but we're going to let Audrey talk about. And thanks, Anna. That's fantastic. I love to know that you talked back to her. That just makes me feel so happy to see that. And it's just because I think it's funny. It's entertaining, to know that, because I hold Jennifer in really, really high regard, and just to see that, like, even when she was coaching her own daughter, she got the teenage, snapback, which is fantastic. Yeah. So, okay, Audrey, now, here we go. You've been excited about like giving me a hard time on my own podcast, and here you go. Lay it on me.
I was going to say, okay, so you are different than you used to be. You are much less intense than you used to be. Just in all regards of life.
That's fine. So we will preface that a little bit. But I'll jump in before you even say anything. And most people on this podcast probably know, but those that are listening don't. Like 2 years ago, I had an enormous change in my life in which I suffered an ischemic stroke and suffered some pretty serious high anxiety, some PTSD, and completely changed my perspective on a lot of things in life. And Audrey will be able to tell you differently things. If you watch this on YouTube, you will see a video, you will see a picture of me just absolutely about to bust a vein in my neck, screaming.
Bring that picture up.
Yeah. And so I'll let her say it. So a lot of what she's going to say, you might, as you listen to this, you might be like, I can't believe he's like, that's not bothering me. But Audrey and I have talked about this some already, and we've done it, and I'm different than I was. And when I talk about so many of the things that I would do differently as a coach, most of them are probably that year, in coaching her. So I'm okay with it. And I'm telling her that to let her know that, hey, it's okay. You can lay it on me, because I feel like I'm past that. So go ahead, Audrey.
I would say that the two of us are both very similar people. Like, we have, at least we both used to, I still kind of do, have like a pretty short fuse. Like, if we get upset, we like will not hesitate to just like start yelling and get kind of mad. I think it's a Thomann thing. We're pretty stubborn people.
Yes.
But
and I think it's a point is that when you mentioned when I was different, when I coach Lane is different because he doesn't have that, right? No. He's different. So I think, and Anna, if I go back to you and your mom have different personalities.
Yeah. I'm much more quiet, and she's just like, in your face.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that those kind of, you and your mom, as I said, are one situation. Audrey and I are a completely different situation in the fact that we are the same person personality wise. So it makes a different situation. So go ahead, Audrey. I'll stop interrupting you.
But so it just like we butt heads because we both like have an opinion, and we are both convinced that opinion is like the law. Like, that opinion's right. And so like Anna said, like I would yell back at you. Like, Lane just shakes his head, says okay, even if he disagrees with it, he's gonna go on with his day. I'm not like that. I will like make my opinion very known. And so I remember one time at a practice sophomore year, we were doing a new sideline out of bounds play, and you had me throwing it out like on the sideline, and I had to throw it like down to the opposite corner of the block. And I'm like trying to do it, and you're like, you need to get it there, like throw it farther. And I'm like, I'm trying. And I tried like 10 times in a row, and every time you're like, what are you doing? You're not throwing it far enough. And I'd be like, noodle arms. Like, I'm trying my best here, but now I'm stressing out because everyone's just standing around looking at the two of us. Like, I've thrown 10 passes in a row. No one else on the team has done anything. They're just standing there watching me throw like passes over and over, and they're just not getting there. And I'm like about to be in tears, and I'm like, Dad, someone else needs to do this. Like, someone else on this team, I guarantee, was stronger than I am. And we just like kept going. And finally I was like, no. And you were like, okay, someone else do it. I was like, thanks, I'm done. But it was just like everyone else stands there and watches, and everyone else is like, well, this is awkward.
No, I don't even remember that. How about that? Like, that was like,
yeah.
So this is like it's funny because I don't even remember it. It's not funny, but you get what I'm saying. But yeah, I'm quite certain. Knowing me back then, it was like it was tapping into my own things, not worrying about what was good for you, right? Because there's probably a point where it's like 3 shots at it. It probably would have been good, but 10 of them was probably a bit much, right?
Like, you were confident in my ability to do it, but then I just kept going and I was getting tired and I was like, I'm not confident in my ability to do this. And you, like, I just keep disappointing everyone else on the team and you. And I was like, I need to be done. This is not gonna happen right now. So
No,
I just remember things like that. Like, you had confidence in me to push me, but I don't respond the same to criticism. And the more I just like keep doing something and failing over and over again, you'd be like, well, you have to keep going, like, get it right. And I'd be like, I like am a type of person, I've just failed this like 15 times. I won't be able to make the next one. Like, I need to take a break, do something else. Because, like, until my mindset changes or I get a break, I'm not going to do any better. Like, just pushing. Some people are, like, really good at, like, negative criticism. Like, Lane, you'd be like, you need to do better. And he'd be like, yes, sir, got it. And I'd be like, you need to be quiet so I can, like, refocus right now and not freak out.
Yeah, I think that Anna said it. Now you're saying it is that idea of the pump the brakes, right? Like, occasionally the accelerator is not the right pedal, right? Yeah. Occasionally move your foot to the left just a touch, right? And I think that's a great point from you two that I'm seeing. Even though the situations are different, that's one thing that it's like I'm seeing. That's a commonality, which is just good to have. Any other stories, Audrey?
I mean, I do remember, like, so like Anna said, sometimes people think like you're only playing because, oh, your parents the coach, like that's why you're starting, that's why you're playing. And I remember, so sophomore year, I started varsity, which was because I would say I'm a decent basketball player, but more because we had 0 seniors on the team that year, and I think we had 4 juniors. So like, there was a large majority of the sophomores that played varsity, and we just played up varsity and didn't play JV because like we struggled to make a varsity team with numbers. And there was one game, like I had been playing bad for a couple games in a row, like I was just not doing great. And you like took me into the locker room at halftime. It was at I don't even remember where it was at, but I can see the locker room. It's like the cement ones that are like underground.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you like took me in a locker room. You were like, I'm gonna put you back on JV. Like, you need to do better, or you're going on JV and you're only playing JV. And like in my head, I'm like, you're gonna have 6 players on varsity. You put me on JV only. Like I understand like pushing me, and other coaches would be like, hey, like you are struggling. Like some might have like negative, like I'm gonna start making you play JV if you don't get it together. But you were like, you're only playing JV. Like you need to get it together. And I was like, literally won't have enough to play a full game varsity, like if you put me down JV. I understand I've been struggling, but like this is not, I was like, this doesn't even make any sense. This is not the way to push me.
Yeah, and that's one of those things in hindsight that it's like, oh, that was a huge miscalculation on my part, right? That was just like, looking back at it now and knowing what I know. And it's what's funny is this is so interesting. I didn't even think about this as me talking to you now and you telling this story, and Anna sitting over there who I've coached through stuff. And I'm sure Anna's like, there's no way he would be saying that, right? But it's a different situation. It was different for me back then. And now I know from what I've learned that idea of I was probably doing nothing, but you already probably had some of those, self-conscious, thoughts about not being good enough. And all I did was give power to that voice. And you're right. I'm sure you probably didn't play any better for me saying that. I'm sure it didn't help. So it's just an interesting, I appreciate that story. And that's exactly the sort of thing that, really that I know I was doing wrong back then, but I think that still happens a lot from a lot of the situations that we're talking about where the parent knows the player's ability, but then when it doesn't happen, the ego gets involved and they get frustrated and they're trying to push them and don't know how to do it. And that's the
same for both me and Anna. Like our parents, like you guys always wanted what's best for us as like athletes and just people. Like you saw so much potential in us. Like, you are going to be so good. Like, this is why I'm pushing you. It was never like from like an ill like place in your heart where you were like, no, I'm just gonna push them to be like a mean coach. Like, you saw it and be like, I see that you could be so good at this. Like, you definitely have the potential to do this. But then like sometimes you struggle to see that in yourself, and then it gets harder when it's like your parent and you're like, I really don't want to disappoint them, but like your tone of voice or the things you're saying, like, you forget that they're doing it because they like have confidence in you and just think that like, oh, I'm disappointing like the most important person in my life.
Yeah, and that makes it tough. I think that one of the things that I constantly at the time questioned whether I was doing it right, whether you even enjoyed it, if you liked me at all or anything like that. I'll never forget the time that you bought who got you that cup? Did I get
Mom.
it for you? That coffee cup? Mom got
it for me for Christmas.
Do you still have that cup?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in my
And what's the cup say?
It says Ball Gap Help.
Ball Gap Help, and for those non-basketball folks like Anna, right? That's not a big deal for you, right? What's the Ball Gap Help? It's a defensive thing, and it was definitely something that when I coached her, that was the way we did play defense. And to see her have that on a cup and walk around and be proud of it, I'm like, well, I must be doing something right? So it was interesting. We're going to take a break real quick, and when we come back, ladies, I really want to talk about the idea of the separation of home and the gym, and how that worked, or if it worked, or lack thereof. So we'll take a break and we'll come back to that.
In a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experienced depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where Mental Mettle Coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Mettle Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives. Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with Mental Mettle Coaching and see them excel.
The Mental Mettle Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. And once again, we're back on the Mental Mettle Podcast with Anna Hayes and Audrey Thomann here talking about their experience of playing for their coach when in high school. And we've talked about some stories, some funny now stories, not necessarily funny at the time. Talked about some of the positive, some of the negative. I really want to talk about that idea of that separation of home and gym, and how do you go from Anna and you guys' situation? How do you get her to go from mom to coach? And is that a possibility, or how well did you guys do at that?
I think she definitely put up a valiant effort to make it to separate home and coach, but it really didn't exist. We would come home, we would talk about it. We'd come home and we'd dissect it. We'd come home. How was practice? How was the game? How do we make it better? How can I make myself better? How do we improve? But it was just constant all the time. There really is no separation between home and gym at all. One of the funniest things when I was this was more for when I wasn't playing, like when I was in junior high and she was in high school, and I'd be with my dad and I'd be like, oh, really hope Really hope we win tonight because I really need her to be in a good mood tonight. We want her to be happy when she comes home. And her mood is so reliant on whether or not she won or not. And we would always be praying for that win so she'd come home happy. But she's really passionate about what she does, and if you didn't have the at home part, it would just be weird. Like, that wouldn't be my mom.
I think that the question I have is, that I hadn't thought of, is what is in this relationship, what is Dad's role in that situation, or what was it at the time?
It still is very much present. He's her number one supporter. Talks her off the ledge of big games, or helps her plan, helps her scout, helps her see a different, more objective side of things when she's getting very narrow-minded with what she sees.
But how did he fit? Yeah. How did he fit in with the relationship between you two when that was going on?
So he took a very different role when I was playing. He just wanted to be Dad. He just wanted to watch me play. He just wanted to support me. So, I mean, for sure he helped to be objective, but for the main part, he just wanted to be Dad in the stands watching his mother play.
No, I applaud him for being able to do that. That's fantastic. Yeah. So, Audrey, I'll give you your chance to respond there on, and obviously I was part of that equation, but from your perspective about the separation of gym and home, what do you remember?
I think the most evident, and the thing I remember most, is that year you coached me, Mom literally made a rule, we're not allowed to talk about basketball at home. At some point during that year, it was going so bad. We would come home from a game, and I would just, it was I never got to leave the locker room. After a loss, the locker room talk after a loss that you just dread so much, where you're sitting there and you're like, I just want to change out of my sweaty clothes. I don't want to be yelled at right now. I know we played bad. It was felt like you never got to leave the locker room at sometimes. You'd come home and you'd just still be in that lecture, this is what you could have done better. And after good games or good practices, it was fun to come home and talk about basketball and be like, oh, do you remember that play? That was great. But there was a while where none of our talks at home were fun or productive. So Mom made that rule, you two are not allowed to talk basketball at home. At home, you're father and daughter, that's it. You're not coach. At home, he's Dad. At practice, whatever, he's coach. No, there's no intermixing.
Yeah, I remember that. We kind of stayed to it.
We tried.
But we tried. It was difficult. And let's be honest, that year, it was as you mentioned, it was an enormous rebuilding year.
Yes.
Because we had a couple juniors and no seniors, and it was a tough year. I think it was a year that caused it was a rebuilding year in the sense that it actually did allow the program to rebuild, and it became.
To my memory, it was kind of the first year, freshman year, girls basketball was a joke. That year was kind of the first year, girls basketball at DMAC kind of started getting taken seriously. And even watching them this year, they were insanely good. There's been tons of coaches since then. There's been 3 different coaches since then, but it wouldn't have happened if that year hadn't happened. And it was a very intense, and it was a shift. Practices were intense compared to the year before. It was pretty chill. It didn't really matter whether we won or lost.
Yeah, and I think that's, and you already know this, but I know that was probably part of the problem in my mindset. Is I knew that I had coached before, just not girls, and I knew the program needed a revamp and a restart, and that was going to start with me, and my expectations were very, very high, and it didn't have anything to do with wins, because we weren't expecting many wins in that. And I think that I accomplished what I wanted in that, but I think at some points, like you said, at some points I feel like it was at the our relationship suffered because of it, right?
Yeah,
that was more important. But Yeah, but that was maybe part of it, and that's
It was an
that's the way it goes.
intense year, and then it just like
You know,
it travels to home.
I
Yeah,
was also thinking while you guys were talking about your experience that you
yeah,
didn't have the privilege of being able to coach her all the way on. So you got 1 year, one glimpse. So like you didn't really like I'm sure you did a great job, but you didn't have a chance to like know how Audrey needed to be coached because you were always dad.
yeah. It's different. It was a weird situation, and I was okay with it. And it was good, but I think that it anytime that a parent is coaching the kid, it is a volatile situation, right? It has the propensity to go like it can be phenomenal. Well, it's probably going to be like again volatile and maybe an explosion, but it could be like a firework fun explosion, or it could be like a somebody left an oily rag behind a dumpster, and next thing you know, it's you never right know what it's going to go away, and that's or how which way it's going to go. But that's the question I'd really love. This podcast is geared for coaches, and a lot of coaches all the way down. And it doesn't necessarily happen, in high school. It does happen, of course, but I think the younger you go, it happens. And so most coaches at the rec league and the youth leagues are a dad, and a kid is on the team. So I think that this message that I want you guys to share here is for those guys and gals coaching their kid. And I want you to give me your perspective on what advice do you have for the coach that's nervous about coaching their kid?
I don't think you could ever be over positive, over encouraging, over rewarding. Those like when you're young, the like little kids don't need to be yelled at or criticized. Like those are the things that they remember the most, and they're going to be detrimental to their performance and their game in the future. How you coach them when they're young is crucial to how they're going to perform later, and just being encouraging, positive, their biggest cheerleader. I think that's the best thing.
Mm. And that's an interesting, and I love what you're saying from now as the mental coach that I am. I completely agree. But having been the guy on that other side, it's difficult because, like you said, because of perspective of others. Like, I think that as the coach, it's like, I don't want it to seem like I'm going easy on my kid, right? I have to be harder on my kid than I am anybody else, or else somebody will complain.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality of what most youth athletic coaches feel. But hearing it from your perspective, that positivity has to be there, right?
I'm saying that you can't be a little hard on them. Like kids need a little, just a little push, but not all the time.
Yeah. Audrey, what are your thoughts?
It's like,
advices for coaches?
Well, about like you always think your kid's playing because they're the coach. Like you were harder on me than anyone else on the team, like without a doubt. Like, but I still feel like sometimes people will be like, well, she's only starting because like her dad's the coach. Like I feel like I still felt that and you still felt that, and it's like you don't understand. Like I get up at like 7 a.m. and we go shoot before school, or like we get home and I have to shoot. Like I'm putting in probably more practice than anyone else on the team because I don't get to leave the gym. And so it's a weird in between because like you care about like what your child's teammates think. Like you don't want their teammates hating them because like they're like, oh well, they're only playing because their parents the coach. Like like you don't want their teammates to resent them for that, but you also don't want to do the thing where you're so hard on them that like they hate the sport. So it's kind of just like you have to be positive and upbeat with your child, but also like kind of everyone, especially at a young age. Like Anna said, like little kids don't need yelled at. They don't take criticism very well. Like especially when you're coaching little kids, just like be very encouraging, and like your own kid included. Like don't try and treat them like they're someone different. If like they deserve the starting spot or like to play, like their abilities will show that. And like, yeah, sure, you have bad games, but you just play them like anyone else. And if people still have a problem with, oh, they're only playing because their parents are coach, then that's on them, because like, you know, you can watch
Yeah,
and see.
it's funny when you put it like that. I like to ask people about either or situations, like looking back. Like, would you rather me been like easier on you and not even bothered to starting you, or was starting you more important than that? Right?
I feel like if I hadn't started, in my brain, I would have been like, well, he has no confidence in me, no faith in me. He doesn't even want to try. So I appreciated that you were hard on me and like had confidence in me, but it's like that balance. Like, be hard on them, push them to do better, but not to the point where like the only thing you talk about is things they need to improve on, or like what's going to happen if they don't do well at this. Like, you know, some of both. And you did well, like encouraging me and stuff. It's just like you remember the negatives more than the positives most of the time. And so it's you, like, especially if you know you're coaching a kid that's like very negative mentally, like, which is me, like you could say 50-50 negative and positive, and I would still feel like you said 90% negative things to me. And that's not like, it's a hard thing to learn. Like, you have to learn how to coach someone else, but it's like, I feel like personally, I would have needed like more positive reinforcement and than negative, and each person's different, so it's hard to like, there's not a set rule book that you follow, but you just kind of have to like, especially if they're your own kid, like you know them well enough, so you just have to like change how you're coaching because you know them better than anyone else.
So then I guess that's the overall question. Should parents be excited about having the opportunity to coach their kid at some point?
Absolutely. It's a great experience.
Yeah. Okay. Then that's great. That's good to know. I think we're last question for each of you. And I'd love to ask this question to people all the time. And Anna, I probably asked you this question before when I was coaching you at some point.
Okay.
What did I not ask that I should have asked you? And that's for either one of you, if you've got an idea.
Okay. We kind of dove into this, but it was how is your child affected with their peers when their parent is the coach? So I was thinking when Audrey was talking about being the coach's daughter, it has such a stigma around it, in my opinion. Like, yes, it's like, oh, you're the coach's daughter, that's great, but there's also a very negative side to it. So, in my first year of high school, so when I was a freshman, I wasn't good friends with the people above me. That wasn't my crowd. But when I was on the team, it was very weird because they were like, oh, the coach's daughter, she's a freshman. And, when, like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place here, but.
Oh, you're fantastic. I get where you're coming from. And it's funny when you say that, I can feel like there's emotion to this. Like when we talk about it, like this is nothing your mom did except be her.
Yeah.
And yet it affected you and and your mentality.
Yeah. So I'll give you the first instance. I was a freshman coming in. Starting high school is already really hard. High school girls are scary, especially when they're older than you. So my mom was number 11. Throughout my from when I was 5 years old to up to this point, I was always number 11. I was always going to be number 11. So when it was our first day, it was like the first week of preseason, and we were picking jerseys. And before we even started, my mom goes, I'm taking this number 11 jersey, and I'm pulling the mom card, and it's for my daughter. That caused
Wow.
that caused
Wow.
some stirring. Like, yeah, great,
Wow.
11, but there was a girl on the team. She was a varsity starter, and her two friends, they were just so pissed that, oh, she's number 11. Like, why? She's a freshman. Why does she get it? Just because you're her mom? I was like, ugh. So that was that was pretty hard. My peers already a little.
I mean, I feel like she really set you up like from day one.
I know.
Wow, I am gonna give her a hard time about that one. Really.
I'm number 11, and the girl that was number 11 ended up she moved the next year, and
well, yeah, because your mom forced her out.
No, she was, it doesn't matter, but they made it known that she was number 11, and she needed the jersey, but, oh well, coach's daughter got it. Anyway,
yeah.
To continue with the story, that entire year, being a freshman, being number 11, my mom doesn't, like, she would not have played me if I did not earn my spot. Like, that's point blank what it is. I earned my spot, played on the right side my freshman year, didn't play in the back row, whatever, played 3 rotations varsity. But I ran into being not included in a lot of things. There was a big tradition where home games that we would go out to eat after, if we won, like we go to Steak and Shake or Culver's, and I was never invited. I started and I played, and I was the only varsity player that didn't get invited. They would have all the starters would hang out, and even one of my good friends in my class would get to go, and I wasn't invited because I was the coach's daughter. I was just left out of a lot of things, and that really kind of hurt, but it's like, you don't even know me. You're just leaving me out because I'm the coach's daughter.
Yeah, and that definitely had to affect some cohesion in the team a little bit. Like, yeah. And that's
yeah, and I remember also someone mentioning to me, this was my quote unquote friend. She goes, "They're only being nice to you because you're the coach's daughter." So, like, they're being used to it. Yeah. Yeah, so
well,
something that we didn't mention,
so that's
was hardships among peers.
That was a definite real thing for a 14, 15-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, stuff's hard enough already to have to go through that. That's tough. And that is the sort of thing. And I'm not going to say, Jennifer, your mom shouldn't have done that or do that. Like, I get the legacy that was really, your mom has put in so much into that she was like, this is probably one of the few perks I'm going to get. I've always worn number 11. I want my daughter to wear number 11. Yeah. That meant a lot to her, and it was fine, but other people don't care about that.
No, it's just like,
no, not at all. Yeah. It's just, the favoritism card, right? Yeah, sure.
Being like a teacher.
Yeah. Audrey, what did I not ask that would have been good to ask?
I mean, we kind of touched on it with Anna talking about, like, once you quit that sport, like, how it changes. Like, you lose the coach aspect of, like, your parent. Like, they still coach you. So, like, even my junior year, my senior year, my freshman year of college, when I played, like, you were still, like, coaching me, like, behind the scenes. But it's, like, it's just different. And just, like, how you go from being, like, coach only to, like, what do I do when they're being coached by someone else? And, like, do I still coach? Am I just dad? Like, you know.
I do think that as a coach's kid and playing in a sport, it does become more of your identity than you realize.
Yeah.
And then that can be really tough, because we talked about, Anna, you talked about how hard it was for you to walk away from the game of volleyball, and that was a big part of it. So, man, I can't thank you both I can't thank you enough for both coming on. It's been a fantastic conversation. Anna, any last comments or thoughts?
I would say that, like, I know that the point of this podcast was to focus on the positive and the negative, but I would say that there were 10 million more positives than negatives, but, like, overall it was a great experience being coached by my mom.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to hear it, and it's fantastic, and thank you for sharing that. Audrey?
I mean, at the end of the day, like, you are a great coach, and I feel like we both have changed, and even if, like, you coaching me wasn't the most positive experience, like, we both learned from it and changed our relationship through it, and, like, it gave us these experiences to, like, help you now, like, help other students and coaches and athletes and stuff, and, like, without that experience, like, it would be much different. We both, like, learned from it, and we, like, have a lot to bond over from it.
I agree, and I would say that both of you too, if any coaches are out there worried about coaching their daughter, I would tell them, hey, you two are fantastic young women, and you aren't overly damaged that I know of. So you seem just fine, and it seems like it was definitely an experience that, you know, whether through the adversity or through the confidence or the mix or whatever, that it's definitely helped mold you into what you are, and you're both fantastic young women. So
Yeah, would not be
that's
where
good
I'm
to
at
hear and good to know.
without her. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I wasn't too worried, Audrey, about asking you on here, because I'm like, if like you came on, like, the fact that you'll come on and talk about it means a lot to me.
And it's
so,
like you're a lot less intense than you were, and I know we've had plenty of conversations about, like, how we both have changed, and I see that, like, you're trying to use the things you've done wrong to, like, teach others. Is like, I'm, like, trying to say, like, I didn't do everything perfect, and I can be very
Right.
hot-headed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much for coming on, and I appreciate both of you.
Stick around after these commercials. I'll do a little breakdown on that interview on how you can coach your kid effectively and positively. Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mental Mettle Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount. In a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experience depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where Mental Mettle coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Mettle Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives. Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with Mental Mettle Coaching and see them excel. Welcome back. Again, I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann. I'm here to do a little breakdown on that interview. Thanks again to those ladies for jumping on and discussing how their experience playing for their parent, which was good and bad, but regardless, I enjoyed them coming on and talking about it. And I learned a lot, even though I was in that situation. I learned from that interview. And the analysis here is, I really want to give some advice, right? Because I mentioned at the very beginning that this happens a lot. There's a lot of moms and dads that get asked to be coaches. And I just want to share my advice. And it's not just from my experience, but it's from my experience of, I work with a lot of athletes all throughout the U.S. at different ages, and so many of them have been coached by a parent at some point. Just like I said, a lot in youth, especially, a lot of the really good players, are from parents that played some sports, so they ended up being the coaches. So there's a lot of kids with this experience, and a lot of them that I work with have that experience. So I'm taking information from my own experience and from what I'm learning with athletes and some of the anxiety and pressure that comes from that. So take everything with a grain of salt, as always, but I am going to tell you from my perspective just some of my tips. The first one is ignore the advice that says, don't bring it home with you. All right. And because a lot of people are going to say that. Say, well, don't bring it home with you. All right. You got to separate the school from the gym from home. And here's why I say don't do that. One, it's not possible. Okay. And if you actually are saying, oh, we shouldn't talk about this at home, you're kind of shedding light on the fact that it's a tense situation and at times it sucks. Right. So I would, and it also keeps you from talking about something you love at home. It got to the point where, and I'm not giving my wife a hard time because she was trying to, be a peacemaker, and I applaud her for trying that. But it got to the point where when we said we couldn't talk about it at home, well, that meant we couldn't. Like if you're gonna watch basketball, and they're gonna be running a play, and it's like similar to some set that we have. Well, how are we gonna not talk about that, right? Because we love basketball, and it's something we do, and it's something we have a common interest. So that makes it's a dangerous situation. But I will say this. As the adult, as the coach, it is your job to make the conversation different at home. Make it be a safe and positive place. Always end of story. All right. I did not do a great job of that, and I wish I had. One of the things I would do is we would talk about something, and my daughter might give an example of how she felt about something or wanting to do something. And I would always answer with it and say, yes, but. Okay. Yes, that was good, but you need to do this. Right. Which was always a little bit of criticism. A really good trick for positivity is to change your yes, but and turn it into yes, and. If she says, hey, I really like doing this, and say, yes, and you can do this, and this would be awesome. Change that little phrase and make sure that your conversations at home are all positive, all supportive. It might change when you get into the gym. You're going to have to be, because sometimes, and the girls said that they need pushed. Sometimes they recognized it as when they were players, they needed pushed, but that shouldn't necessarily be the case at home. That's my tip number one. The next one is, don't tell your kid what they need. Ask your kid what they need. Have a conversation. I don't care how old they are, right? They can be in a very difficult situation. You heard the girls talk about the way that other players and parents saw them and how that affected them. Talk to them and say, what do you need from me? And have a conversation. So I'm not saying that you let your kid, you could be coaching a fifth grader, something like that. And you're not going to let the fifth grader dictate how you do everything. But you need to at least understand what they need or what they think they need, so you can have a discussion about it. So you can at least honor some of their wishes and at least help them understand that you're trying. So that's definitely one. Another tip is temper your expectations and temper your ego. All right. You are a parent coach, and that means you are still partly a parent. And if you are not aware of this, parents have parent goggles. It is by nature and by design that we love our kids the best, and we think they're the best, and we see their positives and their potential more than we see others. It's a normal thing, right? Some parents get way out of hand. But even those of us that get into coaching and are aware of this, you have to constantly be thinking about, what are my expectations for my kid, and how is my ego getting in the way of what I'm trying to do? Again, you won't be perfect. You won't do everything right, but you at least need to have the conversation with yourself and maybe with another coach. I think that'd be a great idea. You got an assistant coach and say, hey, what am I doing right with my kid? What am I doing wrong with my kid? So you get an opportunity to get those parent goggles off there, because it's very important to do. Another tip, just accept the fact that you will be judged by others and that those verdicts will be given out at every game, and they'll be lobbed at you from the cheap seats. It is both a blessing and a curse, the way that we have so much passion in this country and in our culture over sports. Right? I would not want it any other way. I love the passion that people have, but that also means it gets misdirected. And if you are a person that is being a parent and a coach, you are definitely in the crosshairs of people. It is a given. It's going to happen. It doesn't make what they are doing correct. It doesn't make what they're saying fair, but they're going to do it, and it's going to happen. Some of that information that you'll get, and you're going to hear a lot of coaches just say, don't listen to anybody. Don't hear any, just ignore everybody, do your own thing. I really don't believe in that. I really believe that we should use criticism. Okay. I believe that criticism is a very, very useful tool. We can use it to get better, but you have to be very strong and very confident about what you can do, what you can't do, what you do know, what you don't know. And you have to be very assured, confident in yourself to listen to that and not let it make you shut down and say, oh my gosh, I'm terrible. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I shouldn't be coaching. But then you also can't let it make you hard and make you, just this unforgiving person that doesn't listen to anybody. Neither one of those serve you very well. So you've got to be somewhere in the middle. You got to listen to that criticism, take people that, when I say that they lob those verdicts from the stands, they aren't doing it correctly. They aren't. It's said with a tone that's not good. It's said in a way that's not good, but you can use the information, take the tone out, take the delivery out, and use that information to your advantage. Okay. The last piece of advice is another one of these things I'm saying what not to do. People would say, and it's kind of like the first one where it said, don't take it home with you. People would say, well, at practice, be a coach, and at home, be a parent. And I get that. I do. I get it. I understand why that's important, but I would tell you that my advice is be a parent first. Okay? You can be a coach second. You can be two things at once and have both be very important, but never forget that you are a parent first. Okay? I'm not saying that you need to coach like a parent that isn't a coach. You are not going to change that. You need to still act like a coach in some respects, and you need to do all those things you need to be very fair in how you're handling the kids and all those things. So you don't want to be like a parent who doesn't care about anything else and only cares about their kid. But you have to remember, you are a parent first. What I really mean by that is your relationship with your kid and the emotional support that your kid is going to need is so much more important than anything that will happen with that season. The wins, the losses, anything like that. I think that if we say, oh, be a coach at the gym and home, be a coach at the gym and be a parent at home, I think it really reaches to the point, or it really speaks to the point that we put, and I know I'm into sports, I know I'm into athletics, and that's the field I'm in, but it does make me think that sometimes we put a little too much emphasis on athletics. The fact that we could actually think that those things are equals. And I don't think they are, and I don't think they should be. I think you should always be the type of parent that you want to be, and that should be first, being a coach second. I'm sure other people will not agree with that, but it is, I think that it's a level of priority, and being a parent is so much more, has so much more priority than a season and a job you'll do coaching. So that's my little bit of advice, my breakdown from that interview. I really enjoyed it. I hope you liked that one. Anytime, as I've mentioned before, shoot me an email if you have questions, thoughts, any of my, any of these stuff coming in my brain and that you want to hear or hear more of or hear less of. I'm all ears. CoachThomann@gmail.com. You'll see it in the show notes. Along with, and don't forget to support our sponsors. I use this, my online course. I use it as a platform to get that out there. So I use that to support this. And then Quick Cuts, if you're a coach, look into Quick Cuts. I really appreciate the support. The last thing, just remember, athletics, sports, they need parents. And it's going to be coaches. Those parents are going to be coaches, and coaches are going to be parents. It's going to happen. So listen to this, take some advice, but do it intentionally. Don't shy away from it. Enjoy it. I loved being a coach. I loved coaching my kids. There were mistakes I made that I wish I could come back, but that's life for us. So just whatever you decide to do, just be intentional with it. It's good advice for everything. So be intentional and be a good coach, but more important, be a good parent. Until next time, it's been the Mental Mettle Podcast. Thanks again for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by Quick Cut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Mettle Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Mettle Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Mettle Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your mettle.